Hello everyone, welcome to Arch and Towers here on this Friday night. I'm Michael Bailey, I'm with Paddy Davitt, and we are, of course, back from Colney, having taken in the press conference, Norwich City ahead of Middlesbrough on Saturday, the first post-January transfer window press conference, and it only took up the first 10 minutes of the chat with Daniel today, didn't it, Pad, in the end?
Yeah, which I haven't bothered transcribing, to be brutally honest. I'm a bit sick of it, so there'll be no transfer news or anything to do with transfers in tomorrow, but I think you've clipped out a video, haven't you?
There is a video, yeah.
If you still need a fix about transfers, then head to the YouTube channel, PinkUn YouTube channel.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? Can we praise it? I mean, he's generally happy, isn't he? A lot of praise for Stuart Webber, I noticed, and in terms of all the things they've achieved as he saw it, reducing the wage bill, reducing the age of the squad, clearly moving on a couple of players that they felt needed some games, and then the quality that they've brought in, and one of those guys is of course Moritz Leitner, who we also got to speak to today in a rare press conference appearance, so to speak. Apparently so.
First media in 2 years, which maybe is more of a nod to how many games he's played in 2 years.
Well, yeah,
not many. We'll probably get into him, but later on. But I mean, he was Farke. That is. I thought, I think he's reasonably happy with the business. Reiterated, in an ideal world, purely separating out the financial from the footballing element. You wouldn't want to lose Alex Pritchard in the same way, pertinent to this weekend. You wouldn't want to lose Johnny House, and Farke made the point again. But given there is a financial necessity to everything Norwich do now, particularly when it comes to the windows, then I think the feeling certainly inside the camp is that they've done about as best as they could in terms of the fees they've got. I mean, again, he was quite open. He feels in the last two windows Norwich have banked more within the Championship, more money than any other club. I'm sure there's a lot of fans out there probably don't want to hear that as a badge of honour, because it cuts them to the core of the issue they're wrestling with in terms of trying to remain competitive at the top end of the table while sadly maybe losing one or two of their better players, and that's, I'm afraid, a scenario that's probably going to be played out with a certain young midfielder in the summer. But within that context, he's quite happy. The top end of the pitch was the focus. They've gone out and brought in lads, but will we see them hit the ground running? That, for me, now is the big question starting with tomorrow. You talked about Leitner, but it's more Shrabeni and Onel Hernandez. Can they come in and really hit the ground, or are they going to take Yannick Wiltshire type of scenarios to bed in, as in next season? Well, he probably never bedded in, but it was certainly the following season before we saw anything from him at all.
It was indeed. I'm sorry to do this, Pad, but we are getting a couple of questions in about the transfer window, and it's not like we haven't done a few of these over the last few days, but let's rattle through. Nick Deal, sorry to ask a transfer question straight up. I know there was no official line on Leitner's future, but do you get the impression there's a potential longer stay for him at Norwich beyond the end of the season? I mean, as far as I know, there aren't any options and things like that, and I think that's kind of been confirmed, hasn't it? But
I think I've seen, separate to the quotes we've got from him today, I have seen some that he is looking at it very much to try and get some games and then go back and try and force his way back in at Augsburg. Top Bundesliga club. Were in the Champions League, I think, or certainly the Europa League in the last season or two. So you don't see a scenario as we sit here today where Moritz Leitner is anything more than a 6-month loan. But in the way that Tom Tribal came in and people weren't sure about him, and he showed he was good enough, and now it looks like that's going to end in a new contract, possibly. But no, I don't see that. I don't see Moritz. I don't know his contract situation at Augsburg, but I'd imagine he's still got a few years left because he only went there in January of last year, so he's only been there 12 months. So no, I think is the answer. I think to give the lad his credit, I mean, he was asked that today and said, look, it's not about the past, it's certainly not about the future. For him, it's all about, can he get into this Norwich team, can he play some games, because you've got the sense that there's a guy who's desperate to play football and as he said, walk around with a smile on his face. Now it sounds like it's been quite tough for him. He was the next big thing in Germany, and his career's gone down a bit of a cul-de-sac, and I'd imagine he's just desperate to get that feeling back of why he A, was so highly touted, and B, why he clearly has got something about him in terms of can play at the highest level, because it's a very strange scenario why he's now rocked up at Norwich and he sat on the bench at Griffin Park, Brentford, when he was the German under-21 captain, Jurgen Klopp, spent big money after he'd only played 16 games for 1860 Munich.
Yeah.
He was still only 18, 19, and yet Klopp at Dortmund, massive club in Germany, they felt he was the next big thing, and it hasn't happened. So, no, do I see him here next season? No.
Looking forward to seeing him play this season. Let's deal with that bit first, because let's get stuck into that. John Messi, does Farke's past with Dortmund and Europe make us a quality loan option for clubs looking to improve young players? Is that a healthy long-term system? I think that's probably a different question, because ideally you don't want to be relying on loans, but it was quite clear, wasn't it? Leitner is here because of Farke. No, it's that straightforward.
No other reason. Yes, he wanted to come and sample English football, but I don't think he would have come at this stage of his career if it wasn't to work with a guy who he'd worked for a year and a half, and he was very effusive in his praise. Excellent coach, plays the football that he likes to play. I think that is an interesting avenue. And to be honest, Hernandez and Shrabeni are both here, I get the sense, because it's Farke's call, as much as Webber's actually made the transactions and made the deals happen. I think Farke's actually driven the process, and so it clearly is a productive avenue so far for Norwich. Whether it can continue to be, I don't know moving forward. But in these first two windows, if you strip out the German option, I'm not sure where they'd have sourced players from.
You can see a lot of what Moritz Leitner had to say earlier today at lunchtime at Colney. That's all on the PinkUn YouTube channel, and of course PinkUn.com to read and watch what he said. So take that in at your own leisure before tomorrow's game. One more question from Stuart Cousins on the deadline day. Is Maddison's injury due to the fact he's moving to another club? Now, this was actually a joke, wasn't it, at Colney?
One of many. Daniel was cracking today.
He was in good spirits.
Yeah, I think the line was, if you don't see him tomorrow, it isn't because he's secured a move to China, as lucrative as that would be, clearly. But so, no. Funny enough, our esteemed colleague Chris Lakey just said that to me earlier. If this scenario, i.e. Maddison's not potentially available, can you imagine if this had been played out last Friday, i.e. with still 3 or 4 days left in the window? It would have been panic stations and a full-on meltdown. But thankfully, if he isn't available tomorrow, then there's no conspiracy theories, because unfortunately he won't be able to go anywhere till the summer at the earliest. So yeah, it sounds like touch and go. Missed 3 days training with a hamstring problem, but they've scanned it and they think it might be related to his back rather than any sort of tear or blood in the hamstring muscle. So was back in training today. Didn't apparently feel too much pain, but it's one of them. He'll sleep on it and they'll make a late call tomorrow. But it's interesting. We're talking about Leitner, and by all accounts, Leitner can slot in and has that sort of creative edge to his game. So you've got Tribal back in the mix. So for a one-off, it wouldn't be the worst scenario if James isn't able to play tomorrow. Of course, you'd want him in the team, but if he's got to miss out, then there are options. Indeed,
it's Maddison and Tim Closer are the kind of primary injury doubts. Tim Closer with a heel problem, very similar to Maddison, missed several days of training, but has trained today, and they're hoping there won't be a reaction and touch and go, and we'll see how it goes on. A couple of questions on the new guys. John Messi, any chance the new guys will play tomorrow? 8 a.m. kickoff Mountain Time on iFollow. Mountain Time. I don't know where the mountains are, but
8 a.m. Did he say?
8 a.m. Yeah, I'm sure.
America, isn't it? America,
I would
Canada.
have thought so. Good. I hope your alarm's better than mine, John. That's all I'll say there. Connor Southwell, or Southwell, it must be Southwell, mustn't it? Hello, Connor. Do you lads see any of the new lads getting the nod tomorrow? So it must be said that Daniel Farke seemed to intimate there's been an improvement in Marcus Edwards' training this week as well. So we've got him in the mix too. We've only seen Leitner so far. So
if I was to put a pound on which of the three might feature tomorrow, if Maddison isn't available, I think he might slot Hernandez in, just because he's playing the 3-4-3, and clearly he's not going to change that system. A, because it is proving very effective, and B, with Pinto still out, Harrison Reed would have to slot in a wing-back role. So if there is a vacancy at the top end in that 3 with Oliver and Josh, then why not give Hernandez an option? I think it'd be a big call to throw Leitner into the centre of the park. And if Tribal is fit now, why wouldn't you re-establish the Tribal-Tete pairing for me? So you don't see Lewis coming out on the other side. So maybe of the 3, I mean, what I'd like to see tomorrow is Mr. Oliveira get on the score sheet, because he's absolutely desperate now for a goal, and he was a bit unlucky, hit the post at Brentford. Generally, I thought his performance was a bit better than recent weeks, but that's if all the talk at the start of the season was about this side can't defend, how are they going to defend? Well, that's been answered now. Now it's going to be, I fear, between now and the end of the season, how can they score goals? Will they score goals? So Oliver is pretty pivotal to that, and it would be nice to get him on, because he's the type of striker, as he's shown, he scores in clumps.
He does. Yeah.
He did at the start of the season, so to get one, you feel he would then go on a nice little run.
Nice Nelson to score, and then maybe get Dennis Shrabini on for a few minutes at the end to give him his first taste of English football. I think a few people will be keen to see him, and there'll obviously be a little bit of a buzz around Carrow Road. I know it's been a bit stodgy maybe at times this season, but you like to think there'll be a pretty decent atmosphere. And actually, Tony Pulis has already said that they'll need to try and dampen down the crowd after 25 minutes, he's said.
He's not watched many games at Carrow Road this season.
Well, no, and in fact,
no offence, obviously, you need something to actually cheer, and there's not been too much of that.
Well, Norwich have actually been behind 1-0 at half time in the two games that they have won, I think, and then obviously then the ones they've lost as well. I think they were 1-0 down at half time against Brentford as well, so maybe two. But
no, I mean, there's definitely, I get the sense, A, the business they've done, but B, more probably importantly, keeping hold of Maddison, whether he's available tomorrow or not. But I think the general vibe I've picked up is that most Norwich fans are reasonably happy with that window in terms of a strategy, in terms of what they're trying to do within the confines of the financial restrictions they're operating under. So I think there is a general, and then obviously they're coming off the back of a very good performance and win at Brentford. So yes, setting aside the issues they've had at home, I think most fans will turn up there fairly optimistic, and they're playing a good side as well. So you'd hope that lend itself to a pretty decent atmosphere.
Nigel Springle. Nigel, I don't know if you're related to Callum and Dan that I know, who talk Formula 1, but there we go. 2-0 tomorrow. Old habits die hard. Lol. Gotta love a lol. And Simon Meadows. Hope we go at Middlesbrough from kick-off tomorrow. Set up strong up front. Good to see the German lads feature, and not just brought in on as late substitutes. I guess there's a bit of time that Daniel Farke might want to employ with how those guys are involved. Farke spoke a little bit. We've got two strands, I suppose. We've got Tony Pulis, Farke coming up against Tony Pulis, who is as experienced and wily as they come, yet hasn't managed much in the Championship, obviously. And then Johnny Howson's return to Carrow Road. And you wrote in your column that he should get a good reception, didn't you? And Daniel agrees, and he made another joke, didn't he, Daniel?
Remind me which was the joke?
Celebrating a win.
Yeah, which stems from, obviously, at the final whistle at the Riverside. Norwich obviously won that night, played very well, another backs to the wall effort. But yeah, I mean, as I touched on in my column, it was noticeable that Howson actually lingered until the huddle had broken. I think that was the first huddle of the season, by no means the last, but with Farke involved, and made a point of congratulating his ex-coach and teammates, which I thought was a classy touch. Mark of the man. So Daniel was more or less intimating that he'd love him to celebrate. I don't think he was celebrating at the Riverside, if we're brutally honest. If we're factually correct, he was probably congratulating his teammates, but I don't think he'll be celebrating, put it that way. But you get the sentiment. I don't see there ever even being a doubt. Yes, it ended a little bit sourly, and Daniel touched on that today. But that's the nature of football, I'm afraid, certainly at the top level. You'd think I can see a very good reception before the game, and then we'll crack on and try to make it a miserable afternoon for him.
Paul Chesterton, our photographer extraordinaire, it says he's watching. Happy birthday, Paul. I think I saw it was your birthday today.
Happy birthday,
Happy birthday, Paul. I hope you enjoyed it, if it was today or yesterday, but whenever. I'll see you tomorrow. What else have we got here? Because there was something I wanted to pick up on. David McKenzie, closer, doubtful for Saturday. Hopefully he'll feature. Does it throw Sean Raggett into the mix? Interesting speaking.
You asked him that, mate,
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how they'd obviously had the option of maybe loaning him out, but they wanted to keep him in, and they feel that at his age, I think he's 23, isn't he, 24?
Yeah, around
off the top of my head, they feel that he's at an age where he needs to be trained to see if he can manage the step up, and then thrown in and given the step up and see how he does, as much to judge whether he can actually step up next year as well. So they obviously don't want, they didn't want him going to play at a lower level and getting experience that way. They want to fast track him almost. So he's going to get thrown in at the deep end at some point. I guess it's just a question of whether it's this weekend or not. Yeah,
I mean, you would think, even if they persist with the 3, that between now and the end of the season, either injury or suspension will intervene. And, I mean, clearly, Close is already struggling for tomorrow. It sounds like he'll make it, but by no stretch would you expect those 3 to remain fit and healthy and free of suspension. So he will get a chance. And, I mean, it sounded like... they don't feel League 2 to a League 1 loan, for example, was the leap that he needs to be making now. He needs to be really showing, like Zimmerman, had to go through that process, and 1 or 2 others. Jamal Lewis on a different path, but nevertheless coming from academy football to can he handle it? And both of those have ticked the box, but and Shaw needs to do that and needs to show that, because I don't get the sense given what they're trying to do and have a slimmed down squad and everything needs to pull its weight within that squad, I don't think there'll be... I mean, you saw Marcel Franca, he got thrown in. Okay, it wasn't all down to him, but he struggled and jettisoned off to Dresden, and you wonder whether he will come back into the mix. So I think if Raggett, as and when he does get an opportunity, he certainly needs to take it, because... they won't wait for him, I don't think. He needs to show he can make the step up. Yeah, spot on indeed. Okay, well, I think we've covered most bases. There's one final question which I think sums it up quite nicely in terms of heading into tomorrow's game, Pad. Yeah. Barry Newman, your viewpoints on why Norwich City's away record is very good and the home form is mediocre. And that's the sort of $64,000 question, isn't it, really, going into this season? I mean... into this weekend. For me, I guess Norwich, you see most of their away successes have come from a piece of James Maddison brilliance and Norwich being able to be compact. And I guess that formula, by the very nature of it, isn't going to work at Carrow Road. Norwich need to be more expansive. There's going to be more gaps, and they've also tended to need more than 1 goal at home. It doesn't feel like they've been in a position where they've really been able to keep many clean sheets at Carrow Road at all. No, well, as you said earlier, when you're falling behind in games all the time at home, then it's even more difficult because you're struggling to score at a 0-0. So, but I think now with what they've tried to do in the window, in the sense of a guy like Edwards, who clearly can see pictures and can and pick locks, and both in terms of his passing ability and also his dribbling ability. Leitner is a very aggressively minded player, clearly, with a lovely range of passing by all accounts. Hernandez, that gives you an injection of pace now to go beyond and play a bit longer. I think they've tried to bring a little bit more variety to the final third of the pitch, because at Carrow Road it's been so predictable. Whereas Maddison away from home is a great option to have. I think at home the tendency is to try and build this play very deliberately and too ponderously at times, and it hasn't worked. It clearly hasn't worked, because, as you say, at home the onus is on you to force the pace, and it's almost like they can't change gear, whereas away from home they're getting less of the ball, but when they do get it, they do have a bit more dynamism to their play. So that's why I think if you throw Hernandez in there tomorrow, you've got Josh Murphy, who offers you that. Marley Watkins, if he's now firmly back in the fold, and is showing the right attitude and application, then you look at his show reel from Barnsley, he's another one who has a bit of thrust to his game. So, the weapons are there. It's just, can Farke harness them in a formula at home that retains defensive solidity, but just be a little bit quicker in thought and deed at home, because, as I say, it's been far too ponderous, and anybody who's got a season ticket at home this season, more power to them for continuing to turn up. Yes, indeed, and maybe they'll have a decision over whether they keep turning up next year. I think I'm sure that'll be a discussion many will be having between now and the other deadline days. Middlesbrough's away record is pretty decent recently. I think they've won the last 3 in the league away from home, but then drew 0-0 at home with Sheffield Wednesday on the weekend. So in midweek. Prediction then, I'm kind of feeling it's going to be a draw. Yeah, but I think it's going to be tough against a Tony Pulis side. I think the way they line up, and they've got so much quality, they've spent so much money, Johnny Howson, etc. Yeah, what we're basically saying here is, if you fall behind to a Pulis side because he places such a premium on the structure without the ball and being very solid, then it will be very difficult. Setting aside the problems at Carrow Road, which we just discussed, that to chase the game against them, I don't think there's going to be much down for them. So it's important they stay in the game as long as they can, and Yeah, I can see a draw. I mean, it sounds very, very positive week they've had. You know, they've had no, as you made the point, once the window is out of the way. But even before, you know, after Brentford, it was clearly going to be a fairly quiet end for Norwich. So I think this week has been purely focused on matters on the training pitch, and you know, Leitner said it, Farke said it as well. You know, there's a real buzz around the camp now. And that probably comes from the fact that the window's closed. All those lads know they're here between now and the end of the season. And the Russell Martins and Stephen Naismith, they've moved on in the interim. Jerome, Pritchard, all gone. So literally, the focus now should just be on the Championship and then picking up points. And I think they can certainly give them a game tomorrow. But as I say, you do worry a little bit that it might be another link in the chain of more Carrow Road frustration. And if they don't get a result tomorrow, then they've got some very difficult games on the horizon.
They have indeed. With the Derby, East Anglian Derby against Ipswich coming up, of course, and a trip to Derby, which we're doing next weekend. Brilliant. Well, it will be. Yeah, it's going to be a tough one against Middlesbrough. There's no doubt about that. We'll see how it pans out. Just to end on a positive note, though, if Norwich win, they'll go within 2 points of a team chasing the top 6, Pad.
As in Middlesbrough?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, says it all, doesn't it?
Says it all.
Given the relative wage bills and transfer fees.
Barry Norman, 2-1 home win with Oliveira scoring again. We'll take that most definitely. Thank you very much, Paddy. Joy as always. Thanks for all your messages and watching. We appreciate it. We will be at Carrow Road, of course, for all the build-up, live team news, live coverage and full reaction to whatever we get in terms of Norwich City against Middlesbrough on Saturday. Until then, a very good night to you.